Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. If you watch the channel on a regular basis, you know a few weeks ago I did a video on how to fish an underspin and what baits I like to utilize when fishing an underspin for suspended fish. I think it's probably the best bait for deep suspended fish out there. It catches all different species of fish and is a easy technique to learn. It's not, some very complicated way to retrieve the bait. You pretty much cast it out, sink it down to the level you want, and straight retrieve it. It's a pretty simple technique. This underspin is one of my favorite choices. This is just the horsehead style of an underspin. This is a Blakemore with a Berkley boss grub on the end. Yes, you can throw your straight tail fluke style and jerk shad style baits. But I also like to throw smaller grubs with the little kicker tails on the end. I think they work great as well. So today's topic is going to be about how do you find those suspended fish? Where should you look? And it varies a little bit from season to season, but generally it's all going to come down to where the bait fish are. And again, you need to understand the forage species that you're after, because threadfin shad will act differently than blueback herring. And if you're fishing perch, perch will act different than shad. So you want to understand your forage species movements. And you can check out, I've got a bunch of other videos that I've done that talk about where, how to find yellow perch and threadfin shad and gizzard shad. And I got my little buddy just entered. What's up, dude? Okay, I'll be right there. We are still potty training, and it has gone awesome. I think we're on like week 4 right now, and we've had one mistake, and that's it. So he's done absolutely phenomenal. We're pretty much done with it, but he still likes to come get me every time he needs to pee. So sorry for the interruption. We'll get back into suspended fish. So the question is, how do you go about finding these? And yes, the forage is absolutely the key. You got to find the forage to find the fish, because if you have no forage, there's going to be no fish that are roaming around trying to eat that forage. So you're kind of just casting out into the open abyss where there's no fish. So you got to find the forage, whether that's, using your electronics, or if you happen to be just fishing and you find a school of perch or whatever it is. But the electronics are really your best friend when it comes to finding suspended fish. And that could be anything from your side imaging to your down scan to your active target forward facing sonar. All of it comes into play. But if you have even just the most basic 2D sonar, you can still find bait fish. So that's the key, guys. But the high percentage areas to look are going to be if you have any sort of drain. Like if you're down south, there's tons of creek arms that have drains in the back. Pretty much every creek arm ends in a drain, whether it's a little secondary creek or a main creek. But it doesn't have to be specifically a drain like you'd find down south. It could also be a drain that's formed with underwater contours. So if you've got a big flat and an old creek channel coming through it, that creek channel is technically going to be your drain at that point. So you could have a giant flat. You don't have necessarily the big 45-degree bank that's forming a nice, perfect creek arm, back drain. But if you've got an old creek channel that comes through a flat, or just a contour lines where you get a steep break that forms a little bit of a deep water coming up into a flat, it happens in natural lakes as well. Those are areas where the bait fish generally will congregate above that deep water, in that drain. They feel more comfortable there. It gives them deep water access, and at the same time, they can move up into shallow water. And those are really, really good high percentage places to find suspended fish. So that's a number one place to look. If you have a lake that's got deep timber, a lot of times the tops of those trees will congregate bait fish, and therefore you'll get fish that hang out around those trees, because the trees provide cover and an ambush spot for the fish to feed on those forage fish. The one thing I'll say about trees is they can be really difficult to fish, because generally if there's one tree, there's a lot of trees. So it's like an underwater forest. And, you know, there'll be very key spots in that underwater forage that seem to be better than other parts of that giant forest. You know, it's going to be the same as if you were fishing a giant weed flat. You're looking for areas where you have a creek channel. You're looking for isolated trees. You're looking for a point of trees. All of that relates back to the same sort of cover you'd be looking for if you were fishing, you know, grass or different contour lines. So that's a great approach to finding suspended fish. And then the last would be to fish like isolated humps. And the humps that I specifically like to look for are ones that come quickly out of deep water and go above what the thermocline would be. So if the thermocline's in 32 feet of water and you have a hump that comes up to say 25 and it's a steep break, a lot of times what you'll find is the bait fish will congregate around that area with the hump, but the game fish really like to use those areas because they can chase the bait fish into the side of the hump and corner them. Those are really, really good, especially if you're fishing smallmouth and spotted bass. If you have any big humps like that, that's a great area to find suspended fish. Those are the three main areas that I look. Other things that you can utilize to help you key in on suspended fish are watching for bird activity. A lot of times birds will let you know when bait fish have been pushed up to the surface because there are bass underneath that are chasing them. That's a really good way to do it. And just to watch for it, you know, with your open eyes. If you're running down the lake and you happen to look over into a quiet, calm cove and you see some bait fish flicking on the surface, it's probably a good place to go. You know, if you see them early in the morning, a lot of times the shad are up by the surface. At that point, those shad aren't going to swim completely out of that area. They're just going to drop lower. So it's a good area to come back to later in the day and fish for those suspended fish. Because if you find the bait fish, guys, there will be predator fish there that are waiting to get their next meal. It's pretty simple, you know, approach. The hard part is actually executing on it. But once you figure it out, it can really become a very good technique to tap into unpressured fish and get you a few extra fish throughout the day. And a lot of times, like I've said before, those are better quality fish. They're fat fish from feeding up on forage, and they just tend to sometimes be bigger because they're unpressured. So I hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you did, hit that like button. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode. We got another good one coming out.